Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. Well, it's knife unboxing time. I was at Walmart and I got this. At the time, I thought it was $10 instead of $20, but it's a blade. And it's me, so. And it's ugly as hell. See? It even says it in the name. It's ugly. Ugly stick. That's the joke, but in any case. This is a bait knife, which honestly, this just appears to be a knife of, like, a skinning knife, honestly. Ugly turf grip. Gut hook. Is Spanish and English on the back of this thing. Full tank, HCR14 steel. Sheath gay with a sheath, ugly turf grip, 6.22 inch handle with a 5.32 inch blade, so I'm gonna say roughly 11 inches overall. Doesn't really say what kind, it doesn't really say how heavy the knife is, though most of these kinds of knives, they're not going to tell you how much their weight is, because they're just going to be sitting in your tackle box, or hunting bag, or whatever have you. Or, in some cases, some people's hunting bags double as a tackle box. I am, however, glad that they decided to grace us with telling us what steel they are. That's something more, just a moment. Sorry about that. But in any case, I am glad that they are starting to basically tell us what steel the knives are made of now, because it used to be whenever you'd buy one of these knives, it was just, oh, stainless steel. Okay, but what kind of stainless steel? A good stainless steel? Bad stainless steel? You really didn't know what you were buying until, as of late, where they really start disclosing what steel this is made of. An HCR14, as far as I'm aware, is a higher end stainless steel for budget knives, not like super steels like the Dutch Bushcraft boys would say, like Magna Cut or 360 or just a moment. Sorry about that. But in any case, the Dutch Bushcraft boys, they've done super steels, which are basically stainless steels that have edge retention similar to carbon steels, and even some differentially hardened steels edge retention can be achieved with these super stainless steels, which are alloys. HCR13 isn't one of these super alloys, it's just a higher end budget stainless steel than your common 440 or 420, or 440 or 420 HR, which is high carbon versions of the 420 and 440, which are what standard kitchen knives are made out of. 3 minutes in. Now, as we can see, it has what I've been harping on for years about me hating, which is serrations on the edge of the knife and not the spine, with a also smooth edge over here. I love the red and black theme, honestly. Those are my favorite colors, red and black. And it looks like something you'd see on like a gar or an alligator gar or something with this scale-like pattern. Has a lanyard hole at the back because, honestly, I don't see why this would have a lanyard hole. It's not a survival knife. So I'm assuming it's mostly there for aesthetics and maybe customability. Or like to actually use the lanyard to hold on to this thing. But with how grippy the handle is and how this handle is kind of locking into my hands. And with how it locks into my hand, the ergonomics, it really doesn't need the lanyard hole in my opinion. It's pretty much there for, to be there. Now, you're probably wondering, Outlaw, if you harp on serrations being on the blade so much, why did you buy a blade with serrations on the edge? Simply put, I hate serrations on blades that are meant to be survival knives. This is mostly made for cutting up fish and bait. Or I would even say gutting larger fish like catfish and gar and other such larger predatory fish. So since this is mainly to be used to cut through food, basically, I'm okay with it. Because these serrations will aid in doing that. Alright? I hate serrations on knife edges that are generally marketed or advertised or have a design that lends themselves more to the survival aspect of their use rather than the food prep and or hunting aspect. The second reason is that the serrations don't take up half the blade. There's a good chunk of solid edge and a little bit of serrations. I'm okay with a little bit of serrations, but not serrations that basically take up over half or 3/4 of the blade length. Though it is weird that they included a sharpening choil. And if you don't know what a sharpening choil is, it's this little circular cutout down here that they put in to make sharpening your knife easier. I don't see why they would put a sharpening choil in if they're going to put the serrations down here. Mainly because the sharpening choil is there to basically let you pretend my finger was a whetstone, put the edge of the whetstone in that little circular groove so that A, it doesn't grind away the edge of the whetstone, and B, to make it easier to sharpen. So there's that. Also, the gut hook, which we traditionally more see on the hunting knife aesthetic. If this was a hunting knife, then I would have a little more gripe about the serrations, but this is for fish. This isn't for deer. And sometimes, if you're going to be cutting through some of the harder cartilage that's located on a fish's body, like dorsal fins and such, it makes sense to have a little saw on hand that you can kind of just saw through the thin little cartilage bones.
Toilet paper in the toilet.
Sorry about that. What was I? Oh, yes. Since this is for fish, I'm not going to be super harpy on the serrations because unlike... in any case, if this was made for deer, then I'd have a little more to gripe about with the serrations, because when you're taking flesh off of a deer's bone, you really don't want the serrations there to kind of get caught up in the flesh, the skin, or the fur of the deer. But since this is, as I said, for fish, where fish don't have fur, they have scales, you could even just use the serrations as a descaler. Really, I don't really know that much about fishing equipment, considering I'm more of a hunter. My interest in outdoor activity has always been geared more towards the hunting, woods aesthetic versus the fishing, marine aesthetic. And like I said, the gut hook will let you get through the belly of the... basically does the same thing on a fish as it does on a deer. It just makes getting to the guts easier without having to worry too much about cutting into them. It has a stone matte finish. The edge is... it feels sharp. Yeah, well, I was also at Walmart and I got a TMNT bath towel. Don't judge me, okay? Let's just see. I know this is cardboard, so it should cut easier, but... Ooh, ugly stick. It should be mentioned that even swords sometimes have trouble doing this. So, very acceptable. Oh, but we can't forget the gut hook, did they? It looks like they did not skimp on the gut hook's edge. So that's good. Now, I've spent the last 10 minutes on the knife alone and kind of rambling. Let's get to the sheath. And as you can obviously see from the first part, it's corrugated like fishnet stockings, with a very obvious bulge for where this, I guess you could say, handguard slash bolster would go. And if you're wondering what a bolster is, it's basically that metal part on a kitchen knife that swells up to let the handle scales fit on. But let's test the fit up. Satisfying click. Very nice retention. Also pulls out very easily. Now, the reason why the sheath is segmented like this is simply for water flow. Okay? Just because this is a stainless steel doesn't mean it can rust. That's a misconception. Stainless steel can rust. It just takes longer and is more difficult for it to do because of the added metals like nickel and chromium that are mixed into it to give it that corrosion resistant ability. But say you were fishing and you drop this knife in the water. Now, let's say hypothetically you drop the knife in the water, but you have the reflexes to catch it before it sinks too far down. What this sheath will do is it basically lets your knife breathe. It lets the water out and the sun and air in to dry the blade off. As you can see. Now, some people would say that this isn't a good sheath in the terms of, oh, it's got so many holes, so the knife could get dirty. But you need to think what this knife's application is. It's fishing. It's going to be dirty anyways. It's going to be covered in fish oils, guts, slime, scale flaking, scale residue. If some, I believe some fish secrete a mucus to cover themselves. So mucus residue, all kinds of other residues and oils and shit. You really don't want a sheath on a knife like that. A solid sheath, even with a drain hole. Simply because even with that drain hole, if the shit coagulates together down there and blocks the drain hole, your knife is just basically sitting in a super sluggish mixture of, well, pretty much sludge that's just going to rust and rust and rust the blade away. Not to mention the bacteria. So, I can honestly see where they're going with this kind of perforated design. And again, it pulls out perfectly fine, easy. I honestly do recommend, I can honestly, from just first handling this thing, say that if I was going to recommend a knife for just basic fishing apparatus, I kind of say you can't go wrong with this one. It's a relatively good steel that holds an edge. It's well designed with its ergonomics. It has a cool aesthetic with the red and black. It has a perforated sheath to help reduce and minimize rusting of the blade. It holds the blade perfectly fine. And honestly, for most of its standard life and use, it's going to be sitting in a tackle box and only see the light of day 6 months out of the year anyways at any given time, depending on how serious of an angler you are. So, honestly, I know it doesn't sound like I'm being very coherent, and I'm not really, because fishing isn't my forte. Swords, well, not so much guns, but swords. Pre-1900s firearms are my more go-to, like Winchesters, 30-30, Colt 45s, that kind of shit is what I'm more knowledgeable about than modern guns. But hunting, forestry, swordsmanship, those are all my fortes. Fishing has interested me, but it's never really been like my go-to like relaxational thing or go-to means of acquiring food from the wild. I'd much rather be up in a tree stand with a bow. Huh. And I guess you could perform no-toe if you want. Honestly, I feel like this deserves at least a good old outlaw try. So, who knows? Even if it turns out to be like a short or like a 2-minute video, I may do a cutting session with this. So, until next time, my noble band of outlaws, Outlaw Samurai tells all y'all, be crazy rednecks, be safe in using your weapons. I'm out, peace, and fishing season has officially begun in Indiana because we have the DNR magazines out in store. So, who knows? Outlaw may be doing some fishing videos this year. If I can get a fucking ride to any of the lakes around here. I'm out. Peace.